Are you experiencing flameouts, stumbling, rough running with just a little bit of throttle, popping, hard starting? These things are really aggravating when we're riding, and this could indicate that the throttle position sensor on your bike is out of adjustment. I'm Matt from TPSTool.com, and I'm going to show you how to potentially resolve these issues by adjusting the throttle position sensor on your bike. I'm going to show you how to do it using our pigtail that works in combination with your own voltmeter, and how to do it using our fully self-contained professional TPS tool. I'm going to show you how to do it on keyed bikes such as the KTM EXC and on non-keyed bikes such as the KTM SX. This also works on other brands such as Honda, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Yamaha. It'll work on any motor that has an adjustable throttle position sensor. We're going to rock through this really fast, so stay tuned, and here we go. Alright, here we are. This is a KTM 350 SX. This bike does not have a key, and I'm going to show you how to make the throttle position sensor adjustment, TPS adjustment. If you can do it on this bike, you can do it on any bike. This is one of the more tricky ones. Some bikes are very easy. This one, the throttle position sensor is hidden behind this engine mount and behind a little cover. I'll show you how to get that out. Tools you're going to need for this. If you're using our pigtail, I'm trying to see the camera here. If you're using our pigtail, you're going to need your own voltmeter to go with the pigtail. If you're using our Pro model, then that's all you need. Just the Pro model and the harness that comes with it. All right. For the bike itself, you're going to need a T40. For this particular bike, you're going to need a T45 Torx to remove the engine mount. You're going to need a, I believe this is a T25. Double check. Yep, a T25 to remove the cover on the throttle position sensor. You're going to need a nice Phillips screwdriver. A really skinny Phillips screwdriver makes this easier. And a flathead screwdriver. And when it's time to put everything back together, you're going to need a torque wrench to put it back together, if you do it right. All right, so let's get started. First thing to do, I'm going to scoot the camera in here. Get you nice and close. There you go. Okay, first thing to do is remove these three bolts so you can take the engine mount off. These are T45 Torx bolts. Okay, that comes off. Okay, this is the engine breather. It's just in our way, no big deal. Just pull it out, get out of the way. Okay, now this is the cover that the throttle position sensor is behind. We need to get that cover off. Okay, you can see the frame. There's two screws that hold it, one here and one up here, one hidden behind the frame. And so what we're going to do is loosen the throttle body and twist it a little bit, and then we're going to be able to get to both screws. This is what you need your flat blade screwdriver for. There's a clamp on top here. This is hard to do with the camera in your way. Okay, we got that one loose. There's another one, and on this bike, when it came from the factory, the other clamp was on top. You can go through here to get to it. I've already spun it around to the other side. There you go. Okay, now the throttle body is loose. What you're going to do next is take your Phillips screwdriver and pop this screw off the cover. Okay, now the next screw is a little tricky to get to, but not impossible. So what we're going to do is grab a hold of the throttle body, both sides. You're not going to do it hard until I've already loosened the screw. We're going to twist the throttle body, and that screw can be accessed through this hole if you're careful, through the bolt hole if you're careful. And I've already loosened it. Now reach right through there. Just a little bit more. There we go. Now reach through this bolt hole with your skinny screwdriver, and you're going to be able to access that screw. Be really careful, and you won't mess up the threads in that bolt hole. There we go. I dropped the screw, but this is the cover that was in the way. Okay. So now what you have here is a throttle position sensor, and this blue plug right here is the plug you need to remove. That's the one we're gonna mess with. So now the next thing you're gonna do is remove this plug. That's what we're gonna plug in. But to make it easier, we're gonna straighten the throttle body back out again. So grab both sides and gently twist it. There we go. Okay. Now grab a hold of this with your thumb, this tab, and the plug pulls right out. That's our plug. Okay, so take your Pro meter and plug it right in place. There you go. Turn the meter on. There you go. 5234. So that's this bike's original setting. So write that down. If you get to messing with things, you want to go back to where you started, that's the number you go back to. Okay? Now, if you want to test the throttle position sensor itself to find out if it's bad or if it's faulty, what you're going to do is grab a hold of the throttle. Now watch the numbers. As I roll the throttle on, the numbers are going to smoothly increase all the way to full throttle. So there's full throttle. And I'm going to gradually go back down to idle. See the numbers go back down gradually. Okay, that's a good throttle position sensor. Now, if the throttle position sensor was bad, that would jump, go to 0, it wouldn't be smooth. Okay? The other question I get is about messing with the idle at the same time. I don't recommend messing with the idle at the same time you're setting the throttle position sensor, because changing the idle also changes the reading, and you can confuse yourself. So it won't hurt anything, you're going to confuse yourself. So watch, I'm going to grab a hold of the idle with my thumb. I'm just pressing on the idle. You can see the numbers changing. So that's why you don't want to mess with the idle at the same time, because it's going to affect what you're doing. Okay, so what we're going to do is make a little adjustment. We're going to turn this one just a tad bit richer and see what happens. 5239, so I'm going to go up by 0.02. So I'm going to shoot for somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.54 or 543, somewhere in that range. And we'll give it a test ride and see how we like it. So I'm going to turn the throttle body just a little bit more again, because I need to loosen the 2 screws on the throttle position sensor. There's one up here and one down here. These are, again, at T25 Torx. I promise you, there it is, T25 Torx. Now you're going to see why this thing is so crazy sensitive, why you need the meter and not just do it by sight, right? So now, can you see the numbers down here? I'm going to try and set this where you can also see it. Look, you just barely breathe on this thing and it moves, right? That's why you need a meter to help you out. So let's see what we're shooting for. 524, right? I'm sorry, 543. So we're going to go 556. So I'd tighten that down. And you know what? I'm going to actually show you now how to do it with the pigtail as well. So let me do that real quick. Take this off of here. I realize I probably just moved the sensor all over the place since it's unscrewed. So when you're working with the pigtail, notice there's 2 plugs. You're going to put one in the throttle position sensor itself, okay, and one in the bike. Here's the bike's plug. So you're going to plug it into the bike. Now that's going to use the 5 volts from the bike. Now there's 2 different types of voltmeters. There's auto ranging and there's manual. With the auto ranging, such as the Fluke, you're going to look for DC volts, which is usually a V with solid and dotted line over it. Okay, the squiggly line means AC. You want to be on DC. All right, come on, camera. There we go. So I'm going to turn to DC volts. If you're using a manual meter, such as this one, so you're going to shoot for here, it's DC, look for DC volts, and here's 2 volts. So 2 would give me a good range. 20 will work on most meters, but it's not going to give you as much resolution. And if you have something like millivolts, 200 millivolts, that's too small. It's going to be over range. So 2 volts is ideal. Okay, so let's set this guy up. Oops. All right, so you're gonna look at your harness here. You've got a red, green, and a black. Real easy. You're gonna take the black wire, black probe from your meter, put it in the black wire from the harness, black on black, and take the red from your meter and put it in the red from the harness, red on red. Okay, I'm gonna put my meter on DC volts. You notice I've got a big fat 0. That's because nothing is powered right now. So with the fuel injected bikes that do not have a key, if you had a key, you turn the key on, turn the bike on, this thing would power up and be on all day. For a non-keyed bike, what you're going to do is bump the start button. And that'll give you about 8 seconds of power. So here, don't start it. Well, you can, it won't hurt anything, but there you go. So you see, I get about 8 seconds of power. And yeah, God knows where it is because I was bumping it all around. So it works just fine, but you get 8 seconds at a time. And since I have the Pro meter here, I'm going to use it because that's going to be a lot easier to to take my time and get zoomed in on the number I want to. There we go. 5.2. What I say we're shooting for 5.43, right? So let's shoot 4, 5.6, 5. Whoa. Very, very sensitive. 5. There it is. So now it's going to move a little probably when you tighten it. 5.47. Okay. There we go. 5.47 is really close to 5.43. It's only a couple thousandths off. So there you go. We're going to take it out, give it a quick test ride. If it's better, we're going to come back and do it again. We're going to bump it up a little bit more. And you keep bumping it up as long as it's better. If it's worse, you just come back and turn it down and keep doing that as long as it gets better. That's pretty much all there is to it. Now unplug everything, put it all back the way it was. I know with the KTM, they say use Loctite on thread locker on these bolts. So if your bike, whatever your bike is, check the manual, see what they say. But that's the long and short of it, of how to make the adjustments. Real easy. And off you go. I will post another video below that shows how to do it with a keyed bike and a bike that doesn't have this frame, the engine mount here, which is a lot easier. So look for that in just a minute. I'll put the links below. Thank you very much. All right, this is a video about how to set the throttle position sensor on a keyed bike, and this is a KTM EXC. This is the style that does not have a brace here in the frame. If you have the style that has the brace in the frame, check out my other video where I show an SX, which is similar to the newer EXCs, which has the brace in the frame, and I'll show you how to handle that. This is a keyed bike again, so I'm going to show you how to use the harness to adjust on a keyed bike. This is one of the easier bikes. If you've got one of the bikes that doesn't have the frame piece here, this is actually really easy. The only tool you're going to need is a Torx. This is a T25. See if I can get this thing to focus on it. This is a T25 Torx adapter. Can you see that? There we go, T25. And that's the only thing you need. You can actually do this with the gas tank still on the bike, but this being an EXC, the gas tank's big and it would cover everything so the camera couldn't see it. But there is actually plenty of room to get in there with all the tools to do it, even with the gas tank still on. So all you're gonna need is either the pigtail that we sell in combination with your own voltmeter, or our Pro Model TPS tool. Either one will work just fine. And let's get started. So the throttle position sensor is under this boot. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing you're gonna need when it's time to put it all back together is some Windex, because that makes it really easy to get the boot back on. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so the throttle position sensor is under this boot. So you're just gonna pull this boot down. And right here, you'll see there's, this is the plug. Just push this tab with your thumb and it pops right off. And that's the plug. So this is the throttle position sensor right here. Since we are using the harness, we'll go ahead and plug that in. So you plug the female end into the sensor itself and the male end into the bike. Okay, just like that. And now we're going to attach the voltmeter. It's real easy. You've got red, black, and green. And you're just going to take the black probe from your voltmeter and plug it into the black wire. And take the red probe from your voltmeter and plug it into the red wire. Just that simple. Now I occasionally get questions about how to set the meter. So I'm going to show you here. This is a Fluke auto ranging. If you have an auto ranging meter, you're just going to look for DC voltage. It's a V with a solid straight line and a dotted line. The V with the squiggly line is AC voltage. That's not the one you want. You want to set it to DC voltage, just like that. Okay? And if you have a manual meter, like this one, you want to set something around the 2 volt range, if you can find it. Look for the DC volt section. 20 volts works sometimes, but it doesn't have as much resolution. You'll see here how many decimals you've got. You've only got 2 decimals, which is actually plenty to get the job done. If you want more resolution, if you go to a lower setting, like 2 volts, you're going to have, on this meter, 3 decimals. If you have a millivolt range, it's usually too small. If you go down to 200 millivolts, that's not enough. You're going to go past the range of the meter and it's not going to work for you. The 2 volt setting would be ideal if you have a manual meter with that. Okay, now, you'll notice we've got a bunch of zeros because the bike's not powered up yet. This being a keyed bike, watch what happens when I turn the key on. See if I can reach over here and not bump the camera. Okay, And you'll notice the headlight's on now. You can't see the headlight, trust me, it's on, but there's no power yet. You also have to turn the engine switch on. There you go. So this one's been adjusted a little bit. We're at 0.631, which for this year bike is a 2014. It's pretty good. We're going to turn up a little bit because we've still got a little bit of popping. If you wanted to test the full range of the throttle, at this point you can do that to make sure your sensor's not bad. Just grab the throttle and slowly turn it up, and you'll see the voltage increase steadily all the way to full throttle. That's full throttle. Then let it down slowly as well. If the sensor's good, the numbers will change smoothly all the way in between. If there's something wrong with the sensor, it may jump, you may see a 0, it may hang, anything other than smooth. Okay, so we are at 0.628, that's pretty low. Okay, I believe I've got it moved now to where you can see what I'm doing on the bike and the meter as well. So you're just gonna grab your torque. I'm gonna work around the camera here, see how this works. Take your screwdriver, we're gonna turn up just a little bit. I know we're pretty close, 0.628. I'm gonna shoot for 0.64, which on this particular year bike is known to be a pretty good number. This particular year bike, changing the idle does not change the throttle position sensor. So on like the 2014s, I think up to 2016 and earlier, or 2015 for sure and earlier, you can go for a specific number. On the newer bikes, the 2017s, 18s, 19s, you cannot, because the idle affects the throttle position sensor as well. On this here, it does not, so I'm going to shoot for 0.64. So all I need to do is loosen this screw a little bit, loosen this Torx screw just a smidge. Now you're not going to be able to do this by eye because it's so sensitive. If you touch this thing, look how little I touch it and it's moving. I didn't get the screw very loose. Let me try again here. There we go. So we're going to go up to, whoa. Okay, and it does not go very tight, just snug. And there we go, 0.639 is about as close as you're going to get to 0.64 without pulling your hair out. So that's how you do it with the pigtail on a keyed bike. You notice that it stays powered up the whole time. With a bike that's electric start, with a bike that does not have a key, just push button only, check out my other video where I show you how to do that on an SX, a 350 SX. But with a keyed bike that's still keyed, if you've removed the jumper so that it operates like a push button bike, then you're gonna have to do it like the push button bikes. But with a keyed bike, this is how you do it. I get questions all the time about how accurate is the 5 volts from the bike itself. Well, let's find out. To check, all we've got to do is take the red probe out of the red wire and move it over to the green wire. See if I can do this without bumping the camera. And there you go. 5.012 on this particular bike, which is really close. That's off by, what, 100th? 1,000ths, which is spot on pretty much. So the 5 volts from the bike is more than enough, and that works well. All right, let me show you how to do it with a Pro meter. Okay, now let's take a look at how to do this with a Pro meter on the keyed bikes. It's exactly the same as on the push button only bikes. One thing I would like to mention is on the top, you notice you've got ground. On the top of the meter it says G&D, that's ground, FB, which is feedback, and F5, that's 5 volts, of course. And this is the replaced battery light. The reason we've done this with individual wires and not with one plug, which would have actually been easier and cheaper to do, is because not all bikes use the same wires, in the same order. For example, the adventure bikes use the 5 volts on a different color wire. So this allows you to reorder the wires to work on all kinds of different engines. Different bikes, side-by-sides, boat motors, whatever's fuel injected. For pretty much all the KTM motocross and single-cylinder off-road bikes, you're going to put the black in the ground. You're going to put the red in the feedback. And you're going to put the green in the 5 volt. Okay, now all you got to do is plug this guy in. There you go. And if we're going to make the adjustment, exactly the same as before. We're going to take off our tool. Plug back in the bike harness. Now this boot can be a booger. If it slid down the wire and you have trouble sliding it back up the wire, just give it one little spritz of Windex, and that makes it really slippery. It slides right up over the sensor. The sensor is watertight anyway, won't get in there. And the Windex is going to dry up in no time. And we'll be back in business. There we go. All ready to go. Okay, there's a question that's sure to come up, so let's go ahead and answer it, and that is, how accurate is the voltage reference inside the TPS tool, the Pro model? And the answer is it's extremely accurate, and I will show you. So what I've done is I've plugged the pigtail into the TPS tool, and so the TPS tool is providing the 5 volts to the pigtail, and I've plugged it into my voltmeter. What I'm using for a reference meter here is it's a Fluke 87V. They're just under $400 or so on Amazon. Anybody can pick one up. The long and short of it is it's known to be a very accurate meter, so we're going to use that as a reference. So let me put this where you can see it, and I'm going to turn the meter on, the TPS tool Pro meter, so it starts giving us 5 volts. And there you go, accurate to within 1,000th of a volt. And that does not need to be adjusted as the battery changes. Other TPS tools that are out there do need to be adjusted. They don't tell you that, but as the battery goes dead, their meters are going to be less accurate. This one has an active voltage reference, which means it automatically adjusts to loads and to battery conditions. So you're never going to need to adjust it. And check this out as proof. I'm going to plug this into the bike. Oops. Leave that where you can see it. You'll see the reading pop up on the TPS tool. There you go. So now you've got a reading on the TPS tool, and you'll notice the 5 volt reference did not change at all whatsoever. That's the value of a very good voltage reference. That's an expensive part, and we use that because it's good. Okay, and now let's compare the readings for the bike between the TPS tool and the Fluke. So now I've got them both connected to the bike, and you can see that the TPS Tool Pro has more decimals showing now than the Fluke. Is showing 6396, and the Fluke is showing 640, which if you round up 6395, that's what you get. So you can see what you get with the Pro model is an extremely accurate 5 volt reference and an extremely accurate voltmeter. Put those two together, and you've got a professional level tool that gets the job done.